All right, let's jump into MCDP 1 and 2 today.
Okay.
A key document, for sure, lays out how the Marine Corps thinks about modern warfare.
Right.
It's like a refresher course for you guys listening.
Yeah.
A chance to really understand the why behind everything you're training for.
Yeah, the why behind all the strategies and tactics you guys use every day.
So you can succeed on the battlefield.
It really is like a cheat sheet for success out there. Helps you think strategically, make good decisions that align with the bigger picture.
Even when things get complicated.
Right, exactly, no matter how crazy the situation gets.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
Chapter 3, Conducting the Campaign. What's the core concept here?
So the core concept is understanding how to achieve your strategic objectives through military action.
Okay.
It's more than just winning battles.
Right.
It's about choosing your battles wisely,
Okay.
deciding who to engage, when and where, and just as importantly, when and where not to engage.
Makes sense. This reminds me of a quote from Eisenhower in the document.
Yeah.
He says, the word war is synonymous with waste. The problem is to determine how in time and space to expend assets so as to achieve the maximum in results.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It really is about making every move count.
Right.
and keeping your eye on that strategic prize. That's particularly challenging in modern warfare, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Today's battlefield is a mix of, allies, enemies, NGOs, international organizations, media.
It's a melting pot out there.
It is.
And MCDP 1-2 makes it clear that Marines need to be able to navigate this complex political landscape without, losing sight of the strategic objective.
Right.
Knowing when to use military force is the primary tool.
Okay.
And when it's best used in support of other instruments of national power, like diplomacy or economic sanctions.
So how does MCDP 1-2 guide Marines in choosing their battles, and knowing when to engage and when to hold back?
It stresses that just because you can win a battle doesn't mean you should fight it.
Right.
Tactical victories don't automatically equal strategic success.
Like that old saying, winning the battle but losing the war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the Roman general Fabius. He avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal's superior forces during the Second Punic War, choosing instead to wear them down through attrition.
Interesting. Or the Viet Cong,
Right.
who used guerrilla warfare to chip away at the American military's advantage.
Both classic examples of refusing to engage when at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Sometimes the smartest move is to choose your ground and your timing.
Right.
To wait for the moment when you can really leverage your strengths.
But what about those situations where you're forced to fight, even when you might be at a tactical disadvantage?
MCDP 1-2 addresses that too. Sometimes strategic necessity trumps tactical advantage.
Okay.
Look at Nathaniel Greene in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
He was constantly outnumbered and outmaneuvered by the British. But he couldn't simply keep retreating.
Right.
At Guilford Courthouse, he chose to fight Cornwallis even though his army was exhausted. He suffered a tactical defeat, but inflicted heavy losses on the British, which ultimately weakened them for future engagements.
So even losing a battle can contribute to winning the overall war if it aligns with your larger strategic goals.
Precisely. And that's where MCDP 1-2's emphasis on maintaining the initiative and setting the tempo of the campaign comes in. You want to dictate the when and the where of fighting, not let the enemy call the shots.
Which brings us to the operational perspective.
Right.
This idea of thinking beyond the immediate battle and seeing the whole battlefield, the entire campaign.
Exactly. As Field Marshal Slim put it, commanders need to see beyond the parameters of immediate combat to understand the requirements of the theater strategy. It's a different perspective than just focusing on the tactical details of a single engagement.
So what are some examples of leaders putting this operational perspective into action?
Think about Napoleon.
Okay.
He carried maps of the entire continent of Europe during his campaigns. He was always thinking about the big picture.
Wow.
How a battle in one area could impact the overall strategic situation thousands of miles away.
That's some serious strategic vision.
Or Rommel, the Desert Fox.
Yeah.
He was a master of understanding the operational landscape.
Okay.
In North Africa, his use of terrain and ability to disrupt Allied supply lines had a huge impact on the war, even though he was often outnumbered.
So it's not just about winning battles. It's about maneuvering your forces in a way that supports your overall campaign strategy.
Precisely.
Yep.
And MCDP 1-2 highlights how even the way you view military geography changes when you shift from the tactical to the operational level.
How so?
At the tactical level, you're focused on the immediate terrain, hills, valleys, rivers, crucial for planning attacks and defenses. But at the operational level, you zoom out.
Okay.
You focus on those major geographic features that can influence the entire campaign. Mountain ranges, road and railway networks, urban areas, airfields.
It's like the difference between navigating a city block and planning a cross-country road trip.
Exactly. There's a great quote from Patton in MCDP 1.2 that illustrates this perfectly. He said, in the higher echelons, a layered map of the whole theater to a reasonable scale, showing roads, railways, streams, and towns, is more useful than a large-scale map cluttered up with ground forms and a multiplicity of non-essential information.
So at the operational level, you're not getting bogged down in the details of the terrain. You're thinking about the key routes and logistical hubs that allow you to move your forces and support your campaign, understanding those arteries of the battlefield.
That's the key, and that's where we'll pick up when we come back. So we've been talking about this operational perspective, this big picture view of the battlefield. And one of the most powerful tools that you can leverage at this level is surprise.
Surprise. That sounds more like a tactic than a strategic concept.
It can be both, but MCDP 1-2 emphasizes the strategic implications of surprise, especially at the operational level. It defines surprise as a state of disorientation that results from unexpected events and degrades the ability to react effectively. Basically, it's about catching the enemy off guard.
Right.
Disrupting their plans, but on a scale that impacts the entire campaign.
So you're not just talking about, like, ambushing a patrol. You're talking about something that throws a wrench in their entire strategy.
Exactly. Think about the Incheon landing in the Korean War. General MacArthur's decision to land forces behind enemy lines at Incheon was a complete shock to the North Koreans.
Wow.
They knew an attack was coming, but they never expected it there.
And it completely changed the course of the war. That's a perfect illustration of how operational surprise can create opportunities for a decisive counterattack.
Precisely. And MCDP 1.2 breaks down the sources of surprise into 3 categories: deception, ambiguity, and stealth. Think of them as tools in your arsenal for disrupting the enemy's decision-making cycle.
Let's unpack those. What's deception?
Deception is all about misleading the enemy, feeding them false information, leading them down the wrong path. The classic example is the deception campaign leading up to D-Day.
Right.
The Allies created a phantom army, complete with fake radio chatter and inflatable tanks, all to make the Germans believe the invasion was going to happen at Calais, not Normandy.
They put on quite a show, and it worked. The Germans were completely fooled.
It was a masterclass in deception, and it contributed significantly to the success of the Normandy landings. But MCDP 1.2 also points out that while deception has the potential for a huge payoff, it's also the most difficult to pull off, especially at the operational level. It requires a massive amount of coordination and the ability to maintain the illusion over an extended period.
So it's a high-risk, high-reward maneuver.
Yeah, exactly.
What about ambiguity? How does that factor into achieving surprise?
Ambiguity is about keeping the enemy guessing.
Okay.
Creating multiple options so they can't be sure what your true intentions are. It's like a game of 3-card Monte, but on a much larger scale.
So you're overwhelming them with possibilities, making it harder for them to predict your next move.
Exactly. A good example is the Allied invasion of North Africa in 1942. Eisenhower deliberately kept the Axis forces guessing by presenting them with 1,000 miles of coastline as potential landing sites.
Wow.
They couldn't be sure where the main attack was coming from.
That must have tied their planning in knots.
Absolutely. And then there's stealth, the art of operating without the enemy even knowing you're there. Think about Admiral Nimitz at the Battle of Midway. He used intercepted Japanese communications to anticipate their movements and positioned his fleet for a surprise attack.
It's like a ninja move.
Exactly. He hit them before they even knew what was happening.
Wow.
So deception, ambiguity, and stealth. 3 different approaches to achieving surprise, each with its own strengths and challenges.
Right.
But the goal is always the same: to disrupt the enemy's decision-making cycle, to throw them off balance, and create an opening for you to seize the initiative.
So we've talked about surprise, but what about tempo? How does that play into the operational perspective?
Tempo is another crucial element of warfare. MCDP 1.2 calls it a significant weapon because it allows you to dictate the terms of the fight, to force the enemy to react to you rather than the other way around.
So it's about controlling the pace, the rhythm of the battle.
Precisely. NCDP 1-2 makes a distinction between tactical tempo, which is the pace within a single engagement, and operational tempo, which is the pace between engagements.
Okay.
The key is to maintain a higher operational tempo than your opponent,
Right.
to act faster than they can react.
So you're always one step ahead, keeping the enemy off balance.
Yeah.
How do you create that kind of tempo?
There are a few ways. One is to undertake multiple actions simultaneously, like the German Blitzkrieg in World War II.
Right.
They attacked on a broad front, hitting their opponents from multiple directions at once, leaving them reeling and unable to respond effectively.
It was a whirlwind of coordinated attacks designed to overwhelm the enemy before they could even gather their wits.
Exactly. Another way to increase tempo is to anticipate outcomes and plan sequels to exploit those outcomes without delay.
Okay.
You're already thinking about your next move before the current one is even finished.
Like chess, right.
Yeah.
You don't make a move without considering how your opponent will respond and how you'll counter that response.
Exactly. And another way to boost tempo is to decentralize decision-making, to give your subordinate commanders more flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances on the ground.
Right.
Of course, this requires a clear understanding of the commander's intent, but it allows for faster, more agile responses.
You're essentially empowering your leaders in the field to seize opportunities as they arise without waiting for orders from higher headquarters.
Exactly. And as MCDP 1-2 points out, avoiding unnecessary combat is another way to maintain a high tempo.
Okay.
Every engagement, even a victory, costs time and resources.
So you're picking your battles carefully, maneuvering your forces in a way that creates a decisive advantage before the fighting even begins.
That's the goal. Tempo is all about momentum, about keeping the enemy on the back foot and dictating the terms of the engagement. Think of it like a boxer who keeps his opponent against the ropes, constantly applying pressure and never giving them a chance to breathe.
Tempo is a powerful weapon indeed. But there's more to conducting a successful campaign than just surprise and tempo, right?
Absolutely. And MCDP 1-2 emphasizes the importance of synergy, which means integrating all the different warfighting functions to achieve maximum impact. You've got to make sure all the pieces of the puzzle are working together seamlessly.
It's not just about having a great offense or a great defense. It's about making sure they complement each other and work together to achieve your overall goals.
Exactly. MCDP 1-2 focuses on 6 key warfighting functions: command and control, maneuver, fires, intelligence, logistics, and force protection.
Okay.
Think of them as the pillars that support your entire campaign.
Let's dive into those. Starting with command and control. What makes it so critical?
Command and control is essentially the nervous system of your entire operation. It's about making sure everyone is on the same page, that orders are being followed, and that actions are aligned with the overall strategic goals. Without effective command and control, your forces can quickly devolve into a chaotic mess.
Right.
Unable to achieve any cohesive action.
So it's the glue that holds everything together.
Exactly. And MCDP 1-2 points out that achieving effective command and control in a campaign presents some unique challenges.
Okay.
You're dealing with a much larger scale of operations, both in terms of time and space. You have to coordinate with a wider range of players, including joint forces, multinational partners, even civilian agencies.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be. And then there's the information flow. You're dealing with a massive amount of data coming in from multiple sources, and you have to be able to distill that into actionable intelligence quickly. And perhaps most importantly, you have to ensure that the commander's intent is understood and implemented effectively throughout the force.
That's a lot to juggle. So how do you build effective command and control in such a complex environment?
MCDP 1-2 emphasizes a few key things. First, building and sharing situational awareness.
Right.
Everyone needs a clear picture of what's happening on the ground, what the enemy is doing, what your own forces are doing. Second, continuous planning and adaptation. In warfare, things rarely go according to plan, so you need to be able to adjust on the fly and react to changing circumstances. And third, you need to foster a culture of flexibility and initiative within the force.
So it's about having a clear plan, but also being ready to deviate from that plan when necessary.
Exactly. Rigidity can be fatal in war.
Yeah.
You have to be adaptable and responsive to the ever-changing situation. That's where a strong command and control structure really shines.
Okay, let's move on to maneuver. How does that function at the operational level?
MCDP 1-2 describes maneuver as the movement of forces for the purpose of gaining an advantage over the enemy. But while tactical maneuver is focused on gaining an advantage in a specific engagement, operational maneuver is about creating an advantage that impacts the entire campaign.
So it's about positioning your forces in a way that gives you the upper hand before the battle even begins.
Exactly. MacArthur's Incheon landing is a classic example. By using the sea as maneuver space, he was able to outflank the North Korean forces and achieve a decisive victory. Operational maneuver creates opportunities to exploit enemy weaknesses and allows for flexibility in adapting to changing circumstances.
It allows you to dictate the terms of the engagement rather than simply reacting to what the enemy is doing.
Exactly. MCDP 1-2 uses General Sherman's campaign through Georgia in 1864 as an example of this.
Okay.
Sherman kept the Confederate forces off balance by constantly shifting his line of advance, forcing them to react to his movements rather than being able to implement their own plans.
He was always one step ahead, keeping the enemy guessing.
Precisely. And that's the power of maneuver.
Yeah.
It's about creating a situation where you have multiple options while the enemy is scrambling to keep up.
And a key part of maneuver is mobility, right?
Yes.
The ability to reposition your forces quickly and efficiently to exploit those opportunities that you're creating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
MCDP 1-2 distinguishes between tactical mobility, which is about moving within a battle, and operational mobility, which is the ability to move between engagements.
Okay.
It's the difference between, winning a firefight and being able to position your squad to dominate the entire block.
Right.
It gives you options. And as Marines, you know how valuable options are in a fight.
So tactical mobility is about agility on the battlefield, while operational mobility is about the ability to shift your forces across the entire theater of operations.
Exactly. And you need both to be truly effective. MCDP 1-2 stresses the importance of using all available means of transportation. Roads, railways, airlift, sea transport to achieve operational mobility. Think of it like a logistical ballet with all the pieces moving in sync to create the desired effect. The payoff is that operational mobility gives you the freedom to choose when and where to fight, to concentrate your forces at the decisive point, and to exploit enemy weaknesses.
The Allied island hopping campaign in the Pacific during World War II is a great example of how operational mobility can be used to achieve a strategic victory.
Exactly. They were able to leapfrog across vast distances, bypassing heavily fortified islands and focusing their attacks on key objectives.
So we've talked about command and control and maneuver. What about fires? How does MCDP 1-2 approach the use of firepower in a campaign?
It emphasizes the importance of using fires selectively and strategically to shape the battle space and achieve decisive results.
Okay.
It's not about blindly attacking everything in sight.
Right.
It's about precision and impact. About targeting those enemy capabilities that, if neutralized, will have the greatest impact on their ability to fight.
So it's about shaping the battlefield to your advantage.
Exactly. MCDP 1-2 uses Operation Desert Storm as a good illustration of this concept. The coalition forces used air power to cripple Iraqi forces before the ground war even began.
Right. That was a powerful demonstration of how fires can be used to soften up the enemy and prepare the battlefield for decisive ground assault.
It certainly was. And fires can come from a variety of sources: artillery, airstrikes, naval gunfire, even cyber attacks. The key is choosing the right tool for the job and employing those tools in a coordinated and strategic manner,
Right.
always keeping in mind your overall objectives.
It sounds like fires are an incredibly powerful tool in the hands of a skilled commander.
They are. And MCDP 1-2 stresses that using fires effectively requires close coordination with other warfighting functions, particularly maneuver and intelligence.
Right.
You need to know where the enemy is and what their vulnerabilities are before you can target them effectively.
Which brings us to intelligence. How does MCDP 1-2 address the role of intelligence in conducting campaigns?
MCDP 1-2 makes it clear that intelligence is the foundation for everything you do in a campaign. It's how you understand the enemy, the terrain, and the overall operational environment. Without good intelligence, you're essentially flying blind.
Right. You need a clear picture of what you're up against if you want to develop a successful strategy.
Exactly. And the document distinguishes between tactical intelligence, which focuses on the immediate enemy units and terrain features, and operational intelligence, which takes a much broader view.
What does operational intelligence focus on?
It's about understanding the enemy's capabilities and intentions, but also the bigger picture: geography, politics, culture, economics. Anything that can influence the course of the campaign.
Right.
It's about connecting the dots and seeing how all the pieces fit together.
So it's not just about knowing where the enemy is. It's about understanding why they're there, what their goals are, and how the environment might influence their actions.
Exactly. Operational intelligence helps you identify those critical weaknesses in the enemy's structure, their centers of gravity,
Right.
and it helps you anticipate their actions and assess the impact of your own actions.
The Battle of Midway is a great example of how operational intelligence can be decisive.
Right. The US Navy was able to break Japanese codes and decipher their plans to attack Midway. That intelligence allowed Admiral Nimitz to set a trap,
Yeah.
leading to a stunning victory that turned the tide of the war in the Pacific.
So intelligence really is the eyes and ears of the campaign, providing the information you need to make informed decisions and develop effective strategies.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But even the best intelligence won't do you much good if you can't get the beans and bullets to the front line. And that's where logistics comes in.
Okay, let's talk logistics. MCDP 1.2 is pretty clear about its importance, isn't it?
It says, a campaign plan that cannot be logistically supported is not a plan at all, but simply an expression of fanciful wishes. Logistics is the backbone of any military operation. Without it, your forces can't fight, they can't maneuver, they can't sustain themselves in the field.
Right.
It's about making sure the right supplies, the right equipment, the right personnel are in the right place at the right time.
It sounds like a massive undertaking,
Yeah.
especially on the scale of a campaign.
It is. And MCDP 1.2 breaks logistics down into 3 levels. Strategic logistics, which is about getting resources and forces to the theater of operations. Tactical logistics, which supports troops in direct combat. And operational logistics, which bridges the gap between those two.
So operational logistics is about making sure that flow of resources, everything from fuel and ammunition to food and medical supplies, is moving smoothly from the strategic level down to the tactical level.
Exactly. It involves a lot of moving parts. Procuring and delivering materials, creating and maintaining transportation systems, anticipating future needs.
Right.
And it requires flexibility and adaptability because things rarely go exactly according to plan in a fluid campaign environment.
Operation Desert Storm is a great example of that, isn't it? The Marines had to rapidly reposition their logistical support structure to keep up with the rapid advance of their forces.
Right.
They had to be creative and adaptable to overcome the challenges they faced.
That's a great example. They had to improvise, adapt, and overcome, which are all hallmarks of effective operational logistics. It's not just about having the resources. It's about knowing how to use them effectively and being able to adjust your plans on the fly.
So logistics is about more than just moving stuff around. It's about having the foresight to anticipate challenges and the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances.
Exactly. And finally, MCDP 1.2 emphasizes the importance of force protection.
Okay.
It's about proactively protecting your forces, not just reacting to threats.
So it's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. Force protection involves everything from safeguarding your vital assets to concealing your movements and intentions from the enemy. It's about minimizing risks to your troops and equipment so you can maximize combat power when you need it most.
It sounds like playing a high-stakes game of hide and seek, but with very real consequences.
It can be. It involves securing your lines of communication, protecting non-combatants and infrastructure, taking precautions against terrorist activities. It's a multifaceted challenge, and it all starts with understanding what might tip off the enemy to your plans. Once you know what those indicators are, you can take steps to minimize or eliminate them
Okay.
to keep the enemy guessing.
So it's about anticipating enemy actions and taking steps to mitigate the risks.
Precisely. It's about thinking like the enemy, trying to anticipate their moves and stay one step ahead. You're denying them the information they need to target you effectively, which protects your forces and keeps them in the fight.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from strategic thinking and surprise to the importance of tempo, synergy, and the various warfighting functions. MCDP 1.2 really does provide a comprehensive framework for conducting campaigns in the modern world.
It does. It's a roadmap for success in this complex and challenging environment.
Right.
A testament to the Marine Corps commitment to intellectual rigor and adaptability.
But there's one more key concept we need to address before we wrap up. Leadership.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Leadership is the heart and soul of any successful military operation. It's the driving force that turns plans into action,
Right.
that inspires troops to overcome adversity, and that ultimately determines whether a campaign succeeds or fails.
So how does MCDP 1.2 address leadership at the operational level?
It emphasizes that leadership at this level is about more than just giving orders or setting an example.
Okay.
It's about inspiring and unifying large, dispersed groups of people, often from different services
Yeah.
and even different nations, to achieve a common goal. It's about vision, communication, and building trust.
It sounds like a tall order, especially when you consider the complexity of modern warfare.
It is. MCDP 1 to 2 points out that operational commanders need to have a clear vision of the strategic objectives
Okay.
and be able to articulate that vision in a way that inspires their subordinates to action. They have to be able to communicate effectively across multiple layers of command and across different cultures.
Right.
And they need to be able to build trust and cohesion among their troops, even when those troops are spread out over vast distances.
So it's about creating a shared sense of purpose and commitment.
Exactly. And it's about empowering subordinate commanders to make decisions and take initiative within the framework of the overall plan. You need that balance between centralized vision and decentralized execution to be truly effective.
What are some of the key qualities of an effective operational leader, according to MCDP 1 to 2?
The document highlights a few essential traits. Clarity of vision, strength of will, and moral courage. You need to know where you're going, you need the determination to get there, and you need the courage to make the tough calls when things get difficult. Effective communication is also vital, as is the ability to build trust and cohesion within your command. And you need to be able to develop a staff that can act as an extension of your intent, that can anticipate your needs and execute your orders effectively.
That's a lot to ask of any one person.
It is, but that's the nature of leadership at this level. You're responsible for the lives of your troops and the success of the mission. And MCDP 1 to 2 recognizes that the demands on leaders at the operational level are immense.
Yeah.
They have to coordinate with a wide range of players, build consensus for joint and multinational operations, and effectively advocate for the needs of their forces to higher headquarters.
It's a challenging but incredibly rewarding role.
It is.
It's about leading from the front, but also empowering those around you to succeed.
Exactly. It's about having the wisdom to make the tough decisions and the courage to see them through.
Yeah.
It's about inspiring those under your command to achieve great things.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through MCDP 1 to 2. We've covered a lot of ground. From strategic thinking and surprise to the importance of tempo, synergy, and the crucial role of leadership.
It has been a lot.
And it's clear that this document provides a valuable framework for understanding the complexities of modern warfare and the principles that guide successful campaigns.
It's a testament to the Marine Corps' dedication to intellectual growth and their commitment to adapting to the ever-changing challenges of the battlefield.
And for any Marine out there who's looking to deepen their understanding of the art of war, MCDP 1-2 is an essential resource. It's a guidebook to success.
Yeah.
Filled with wisdom from some of the greatest military minds in history.
For sure.
But more than that, it's a call to action. It's a challenge to think critically, to act decisively, and to always strive for excellence in everything you do.
Well said. This deep dive has been a fascinating exploration of the core principles that drive Marine Corps doctrine.
And as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with this thought. MCDP 1-2 isn't just a document to be read and filed away. It's a living, breathing guide to action. It's a challenge to every Marine to embrace these principles, to internalize them, and to apply them in everything they do.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's not about memorizing concepts or theories. It's about using those concepts and theories to achieve victory on the battlefield,
Right.
to protect our nation and our interests, and to uphold the values that we hold dear.
So to all the Marines out there listening, we encourage you to keep learning, keep adapting, and keep pushing yourselves to be the best you can be. Your dedication and your expertise are what make the Marine Corps the formidable force it is.
Well said. It's been a pleasure discussing this vital topic.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into MCDP 1-2. Until next time, stay sharp and Semper Fi. We've spent this deep dive unpacking MCDP 1-2, and it's clear this document is more than just a manual. It's a philosophy, a mindset for approaching modern warfare in all its complexity.
It really is, like a blueprint for building a winning team, you know, where each player understands their role and how it contributes to the overall success of the mission.
And that team extends beyond the battlefield, doesn't it? MCDP 1-2 emphasizes the importance of working with allies, interagency partners,
And absolutely.
and even NGOs in today's interconnected world.
Exactly. It's recognizing that military force is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Diplomacy, economic pressure, information operations, all these tools play a role
Right.
in achieving those strategic objectives.
Thinking back to our discussion about surprise,
Yeah.
it struck me how relevant those concepts are to the challenges you face today.
Yeah.
In an age of instant communication and social media,
Right.
maintaining operational security and achieving surprise
Yeah.
is tougher than ever.
It's a constant battle against information leaks and the enemy's own intelligence gathering capabilities.
Right.
But MCDP 1-2 provides a framework for thinking about deception, ambiguity, and stealth in ways that are adaptable to the modern information environment.
It's about being creative, thinking outside the box, finding ways to exploit the enemy's assumptions, which brings us back to the importance of leadership.
Oh, for sure.
Something MCDP 1-2 really emphasizes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's the leaders who set the tone, who foster a culture of initiative and adaptability within their units. They're the ones who translate these concepts from the page into action on the ground.
And in a fast-paced, rapidly changing environment
Right.
where decisions often need to be made in the blink of an eye, that leadership becomes even more crucial.
Absolutely. MCDP 1-2 reminds us that the fog of war is as thick as ever, maybe even more so in the information age.
Right.
Leaders need that clarity of vision, that ability to cut through the noise and make the right call,
Right.
even when the situation is ambiguous.
So to all the Marines out there listening, as you continue your careers and face new challenges, remember this. MCDP 1-2 is a resource you can always turn back to.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a guidebook, a mentor,
It is.
a reminder of the core principles that have guided the Marine Corps to success for generations.
Study it, internalize it, apply it to the situations you encounter.
Yeah.
Whether you're leading a squad patrol or planning a large-scale operation, these principles are timeless, even as the battlefield evolves.
And never stop learning. Never stop challenging yourselves to be better, to think more strategically, to adapt more quickly. The future of the Marine Corps, the security of our nation, depends on your ability to master these concepts and put them into practice.
It's been a privilege exploring MCDP 1-2 with you.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Till next time, Semper Fi.